So yeah, I mean, this thing also handles PS2 games using EtherSX2. I mean, we've actually got a lot of power here given the price that we paid for this phone. Not bad at all. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's etaprime back here again. In 2022, we had a lot of great Android-powered handhelds hit the market, and some might even call this year the year of the handhelds. We had a lot of great stuff from x86 to these ARM-powered handhelds. And you know, some of these did come in a lot cheaper than one of the more popular x86-powered handhelds on the market, the Steam Deck. But then, you know, when you take a look at some of the other ones, they weren't that far off. I mean, it really didn't make sense to pick up a $300 Android-powered handheld when for $350 you could pick up the Steam Deck. So in this video, we're going to be putting together a relatively cheap handheld gaming device, but this is also going to function as kind of a full-fledged console because we will be able to connect this to a larger display. And you can actually get these for really cheap, but it's going to offer more power than any of the other Android handhelds that hit the market this year, because this is actually going to be powered by the Snapdragon 865. And when we take a look at some of those other handhelds that were released, the most powerful one had that Snapdragon 855. And overall, for a little Android-powered handheld gaming device, I mean, that's actually offering some really great performance, but the Snapdragon 865 SoC actually offers a really nice boost in CPU and GPU performance over the 855, and we can actually get and put something like this together for cheaper. So what I have here is the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. I picked it up used on eBay. This is actually a T-Mobile variant. And overall, it's actually in really good shape. I mean, there's a few blemishes here and there, but nothing affecting performance or the screen quality, and that's really what I was worried about. Now, in order to get this up and running, I mean, you can use basically any Android device. The one you have in your pocket right now, if you use an Android device, can be used as a nice little gaming / emulation / streaming console. But if you want a dedicated device, just note that these are available on eBay. Now, when doing a search, you're going to find a ton of them. You'll see some with cracked screens, cracked backs. Just make sure you read the description and also check out the seller's feedback. Another thing to look out for is the grading system that some people use. C grade is going to have a lot of scratches. B grade is actually going to be pretty decent. I'd call this one a B+. It's not in mint condition, but you can also pick up A grades, but they will be a little more. And one thing to keep in mind here, I'm not going to be using this as my everyday phone. This is going to be a dedicated handheld device, so I'm actually not worried if I can connect it to the correct carrier that I use. But if you're worried about that, also just keep an eye out. But they are available for this price on eBay, and you can also check out refurbished on Amazon. There are other devices on the market from different manufacturers with this same chip, or maybe even a little better like the Snapdragon 870, but I specifically chose the Samsung variant here because it's got one major feature that I personally love, and that's Samsung DeX. So we've also got kind of a desktop operating system built in here. And I love the fact that this does support HDMI over USB Type-C, so we can actually connect this to a larger display and play our games there. And real quick, I wanted to give you a rundown on the specs here. For the CPU, we've got the Snapdragon 865. We've also got 6 gigabytes of RAM with this version, but they also make an 8. 128 gigabytes of internal storage, plus it supports a micro SD card. I've actually got a 400 gigabyte card in this right now. It's got a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display at 120 Hz with a resolution of 1080 by 2400. Wi-Fi 6, which is great for streaming games and cloud gaming. We've also got Bluetooth 5.0, so we can easily connect our favorite Bluetooth devices. A 4500 mAh battery with 25-watt quick charging capabilities. This one here is running Android 12. I actually haven't made the jump to Android 13 yet, but it uses One UI. And we also have Samsung DeX here. The very first thing I wanted to take a look at were just some benchmarks. We've got Geekbench 5, single core, 910, multi, 3184. Not too shabby. I mean, this device did come out in 2020. For 3D Mark Wildlife, 3941. And finally, we've got Antutu with a total score of 675,814. Now, obviously, this isn't on par with something with the Snapdragon 888 or the Snapdragon Gen 1, but it's definitely beaten out the Snapdragon 855, and that's the most powerful Android-powered handheld that you can get at the time of making this video. And I'll tell you, I mean, if you can pick this up for $150 to $160 and want to build a little dedicated handheld system out of it, I'd say it would be totally worth it. We've got a lot of power here. Next thing I wanted to talk about were controllers. Now, if you've already got an Xbox controller, PS4, or PS5, you can get a phone clip. It's going to mount directly on the top of the controller, and you can pick these up for around $10 on Amazon. A great controller that I would highly recommend is the Gamecube X2. It's a USB Type-C controller, and as you can see, your phone will go right in the middle. At the time of making this video, they're actually $39 on Amazon, and that's a pretty good deal because they usually go for around $69. There's also Bluetooth controllers available all over eBay and Amazon. They range from $15 to $60. But my preferred controller that I personally use is the Razer Kishi V2. USB Type-C, very thin profile, but these are a bit expensive. You can get them from $70 to $99. Now, the only reason I'm using the Kishi is because I personally prefer the feel of it, but if I had to go with a different one, it would probably be that GameSir X2. Remember, this is going to connect over USB Type-C, so we have no Bluetooth latency to worry about. But if you've got an Xbox controller already laying around and you just want to get out as cheap as possible, you can always pick up a phone clip. Now, jumping right into it with some native Android gaming, with the Snapdragon 865, I mean, if it's available on the Google Play Store or it's a game that you can sideload, then this thing's definitely going to run it. I've been able to run everything that I've thrown at it: PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, Diablo Immortal, Minecraft, and even one of the harder Android games to run, Genshin Impact. It actually performs quite well. I've got a low-medium mix here with Genshin Impact, and we're at 60 FPS. So yeah, I mean, the Snapdragon 865 in this Samsung Galaxy S20 FE definitely has enough power for native Android gaming. Also, you want to do some cloud gaming from GeForce Now or Xbox game streaming. That's also going to work out quite well as long as you have a decent internet connection. Remember, this does have Wi-Fi 6 built in, and this really does help out with game streaming from your own PC. So I'm using Steam Link, but you could always use Moonlight. I'm connecting to my own gaming PC that I have here on the same network, and this is going to look a bit different from the older big picture, and that's because I'm on the beta of Steam. So we've got Gamepad UI. Basically, Steam Deck interface here, streaming to my phone from my gaming PC. Now, this is a bit different from cloud gaming. I've had much better luck with this. It's all on my own network. I've got a pretty decent router, and since this device has Wi-Fi 6 built in, I can actually stream at 120 FPS to this device here from my gaming PC. And playing the PC version of God of War here at 1080p, 120 FPS really does feel like I'm playing it on a native device. Now, obviously, this device is connected wirelessly. We're connected over Wi-Fi 6, but my gaming PC is actually hardwired to my router, so I'm using Ethernet there. I didn't want to introduce any more latency, but yeah, I mean, this is totally playable and it feels great. So this device obviously has native Android gaming, streaming, and cloud gaming covered, but now it's time to move over to emulation, and this little 865 does a really great job. We're starting off light here with Dreamcast, using the redream emulator. We're at 1920 by 1440, and as long as the game's compatible with the redream emulator, this device will play it at full speed. In fact, we could actually go up to 4K with a lot of these games. Moving over to some PSP emulation using PPSSPP, God of War, Chains of Olympus, 4x resolution, Vulkan backend. Runs great here at 4x, so this means that the easier to emulate games can go up to 7 and even sometimes 10x on the Snapdragon 865. So you don't have to worry about PSP, these games are going to work just fine. I also wanted to throw some Gamecube and Wii emulation in here, and first up we've got some Gamecube using the Dolphin emulator, Vulkan backend, and with Auto Modellista, which is a harder one to emulate, we're at the native resolution. But with something like Sunshine, or even Double Dash, you could go up to 720p with this on the Snapdragon 865 and the latest version of Dolphin. Now later on in the video, we will test out some Wii emulation, but I wanted to do that in DeX mode on a bigger display and show you what we can do there. And of course, we had to test out some PS2 using AetherSX2. Now at the beginning of the video, you saw Gran Turismo 4 running here at 2x resolution using the Vulkan backend. When it comes to something like God of War, I did drop this down to 1x, but we could actually run this at 1.5x. Or if you wanted to go a bit higher with the resolution, you could always turn on some cycle skips, but we're in safe mode right now. And I've tested about 8 games. I've had really good performance on the 865 with AetherSX2. So like I mentioned, there's one big reason I chose the Samsung S device over something like a Poco phone with a Snapdragon 870, and that's DeX mode, or actually just the ability to use USB Type-C to HDMI and get a picture on a larger display. So you can go about this several different ways. You can pick up a cheap USB Type-C to HDMI adapter on Amazon. I'll leave some links in the description. Or if your display supports USB Type-C video, all you need to do is plug it in. This is the new Pixio PX2770 Pro, and it does support USB Type-C video and 65 watt PD fast charging. Plus, we've got some USB ports on the rear of this that will work over USB Type-C. So I've actually got a mouse and keyboard plugged into the USB ports on the monitor itself. And they're going to work right here with the phone in DeX mode. So if you're not familiar with DeX mode, as you can see, we've got a desktop style interface here, and we do have multitasking, multi-window, and this supports 1440p on the Samsung Galaxy S20. I think with Android 13, this will support up to 4K, but right now I can definitely get 1440p out of it, and it looks great. We can also go in and scale up the text size so it's a bit easier to see. Plus, we can swap between audio sources, so if you wanted to do the phone's audio or the monitor's audio, you can do it that way. I mean, it's really up to you. We've also got multi-window, multi-app support. We can rescale all of these windows. Got a calculator running right now, so we can take this full screen. We've also got a snap feature, which comes in handy when you're doing some work. I also need a browser open, so I'm going to go with Chrome. And while I'm doing some calculations here and browsing the web, I also want to play a game, which really doesn't make any sense, but we can definitely do it here. If we open up our app drawer, we can find a game to launch, and I'm just going to go with, we'll do Asphalt 9. And as you can see, we can rescale this window. We can also go full screen with it if we want to, but we can scale it way down and kind of set it right over here. And we can play this game while we're, surfing the web if we want to. You can actually connect a controller. Xbox, PlayStation controllers work connected over Bluetooth. Go totally full screen with it if you want to. But yeah, I mean, this actually works out really well as kind of a mobile desktop system. And you can use this to play your favorite games on a bigger screen. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was recently updated, so now it's working on newer versions of Android. It's been a little while. This has been crashing on everybody since Android 11 release, but they finally fixed it. I've got an Xbox One controller connected over Bluetooth, and just like we saw, I mean, native Android games on the Snapdragon 865 are going to run great. Got the Dolphin emulator running a Wii game here on the big screen. So we've got Sonic Colors, native resolution, Vulkan backend. This one ran at a native 30 FPS on the Wii, and that's what we've got here. I know it's a bit hard to see, but the FPS is up in the top right-hand corner. Does handle this one really well. Another one that I tested was Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. That one runs at 60, and the 865 can handle it. And finally, for some big screen emulation, Ether SX2, Gran Turismo 4, still using that Xbox controller, Vulkan backend. Looks really good here on the big display, and we can run this game at full speed. The 865 can emulate a ton of games at full speed, but you're not going to cover the full library of PS2 or even Gamecube and Wii right now. When it comes down to it, there are some games that are just way too hard to emulate for this chip, and I mean, even the Snapdragon 888, which is coming in with a lot more power, struggles with said games also. And one thing I wanted to mention here is if you don't have a mouse and keyboard for Samsung DeX, we do have a built-in trackpad and kind of mouse setup on the phone screen. It's really easy to use. The last thing we're taking a look at is Steam Link once again, but we're using Samsung DeX here, and it does scale up pretty nicely. As you can see, we've still got that Gamepad UI, so we've got that Steam Deck look here. And I've got an Xbox controller connected to the S20 FE right now. Steam is going to detect that, and we can use it here. I've got Spider-Man Miles Morales streaming from my gaming PC at 120 FPS, and it does look great on this display. So overall, I think a used S20 FE is a great choice when putting together kind of a handheld / gaming console for Android, emulation, even cloud gaming, and streaming. Pretty powerful CPU when you compare it to Android handhelds on the market right now, and you can keep the price way down by picking up a lower end controller and a used S20 FE from eBay. But if you've already got an Android phone in your pocket, you can always use that. And I'm going to tell you, adding physical controls really does make a difference. But if you're used to playing with the touch screen, all of the stuff that we took a look at in this video has touch screen controls built in, and you can use it that way if you want to. I mean, it's really up to you, but if you've been contemplating picking up one of the pre-made Android handhelds on the market, you just don't want to fork out the money for it, you can always put something like this together, which will outperform those handhelds that are on the market as of making this video, and most of the time you can get out cheaper. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. I really appreciate you watching. If you're interested in putting something like this together, I will leave links in the description to eBay for the phones and controllers on Amazon. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And like always, thanks for watching.